This is my review for the NES Advantage, an arcade-style controller for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now you can see the buttons are angled nicely to go well with your hand positioning, and they're big arcade style. You get the arcade style joystick here, and it self-centers pretty nicely. It doesn't usually stick or anything like that. Now if we move in closer, you can see we've got the 1 and 2 button here. So if you're playing an alternating two-player game, you can switch between them, so you only have to use one controller. There's 2 plugs, so you can plug them into both ports. There's a select button, start button, and a slow motion button. That isn't really useful. All it does is rapidly pauses the game. So some games it doesn't even work good in, because you got menus and other stuff and you can't rapidly pause. In other games it's just annoying. The screen will flicker around. It's just not good. And it's also got turbo. You get the turbo for both the A and B buttons. And it's got little knobs, so you can adjust the speed of the turbo depending on the game, so it'll work better for different games. Now, there's one problem with these buttons. They stick, as you can see right there. And it's not too big of a problem all the time, because you can usually just press the other side of it and it'll pop out. But it can come and give you some trouble when you're in a fast-paced game. You're trying to tap the buttons really quickly. If you go for the middle of the button, it won't be too bad, but you're not usually going to be paying attention to that. So it can be an annoyance. It's kind of a minor annoyance. It's not too bad, though. You'll notice the buttons are loud, unlike the joystick. It's nice and quiet. The buttons will also make this loud squeaky noise every once in a while when you tap them really fast, but it's not a major problem. Now, this controller isn't for everybody. It's kind of has a different feel. It's not good for games like Super Mario Brothers or platformers and stuff like that, just because it just feels awkward trying to control it. It's like when you play Super Mario Brothers, it almost feels like you're just playing a ROM and using the keyboard. The only difference being the joystick gives it a little bit more fluid motion, and your hands aren't reversed, where on the keyboard you'd be using the arrows with your right hand and you'd be using the actions with your left hand. You're still using your left hand for the directions like you would on a controller, and your right hand for the actions. It is good for games like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 and 3, because they're both arcade style. In fact, TMNT 2 is a port of an arcade game. There's a Gauntlet 2, 1942, 1943, The Battle of Midway. Then there's puzzle games like Tetris and Yoshi's Cookie. Those games are pretty good to play with it. The only thing is, if you're already used to using the controller, then you might not like it very much. Like a lot of games I still use the controller with, although I do play 1943 with the Advantage. So, if you get a few arcade ports for your NES and you prefer that arcade style control, then you'll probably want to pick one of these up. Otherwise, I would only get it if you're like a big Nintendo collector, because if you're used to the controller, like I said before, then you're probably not going to like using this very much. So, overall, I give it a 7.5 out of 10, because it's a good controller. It's just not good for all the games for the NES.